Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Northwest Connects, where each month we sit down to talk about the stories shaping Northwest Local School District. This is part two in a two-part series about public school funding. In part one, we learned a little bit more about how public school funding works, not only across the state, but specifically here in Northwest Local School District. Now that we have a better understanding about how public school funding works, we're going to talk about some challenges to the system that will directly impact school funding and directly impact our community here in Northwest Local School District. So let's start with the override of veto item 66. What is this decision and what exactly does it mean?
So this summer, when the new budget bill became law, the governor issued multiple line item vetoes. One of them was item number 66. After he vetoed multiple items, the House came back in July, and then the Senate came back this fall, and they overrode one of his vetoes. The veto that they overrode was one that now prohibits emergency levies. That has a significant impact for Northwest for multiple reasons. One, we have two emergency levies currently on the books, one that would expire in 27 and one that expires in 29. The current state of the law does not now allow us to renew those levies. The most important part for Northwest residents about this is the first levy that I mentioned was first passed in 2012. At that point, the state was actually paying a portion of the levies on behalf of the residents through a credit. That was a 12.5% credit. Because we are now no longer allowed to renew that levy that has that credit on it, if we were to go back to the community and ask them for the same amount in a levy, that credit would be lost, and the same amount to the district would now cost our community 12.5% more because of that override.
Okay, so that's a decision that's already been made, that's already in motion, so that is going to have an impact on our community. But there are also some pending bills that could have a serious impact as well. So can we talk about those, starting specifically with House Bill 186? What is this bill and how will House Bill 186 impact Northwest Local School District?
So to start, taxes are flat when passed, except for if a school's on the 20 mil floor or collecting inside millage. So House Bill 186 caps growth that school districts can receive based on GDP. And in fact, the state's estimate is that we would lose an estimated $5 million a year.
Wow. So that's $5 million that would otherwise be going to classrooms, programs, and students.
And as you mentioned, the first one we talked about has already been put in place. This one is pending. It's passed the House, but is now in the Senate for their consideration.
And House Bill 186 is not the only pending bill that could have a devastating impact on our district. There's also House Bill 335. So can you give us an overview of House Bill 335 and how this would impact our district?
So 335 is similar to 186 in that it caps inside millage at GDP. But inside millage, we get into our general fund as well as our permanent improvement fund. And we utilize our permanent improvement funds to purchase buses, technology, and we also use it for our building maintenance.
And to follow up on that, some of those inside millage reductions would not only impact schools, but local governments as well, like townships. And so one of the things that we understand is that there is a need for property tax reform across the state of Ohio. Our residents and residents across Ohio need relief, but we also need to be systemic and proactive in how we do that so that it doesn't just move the burden from one place to another and hurt local communities, local governments, and local school districts. So we are not arguing against reform, but this reform that they're proposing is just shifting the burden. It's not true reform with a solution.
So these bills could pull millions from our district as well as districts across the state. Who's going to make up that gap in funding?
So as we mentioned earlier, it's a state and local partnership for school districts. And as things are continuing to shift and change, the burden is continuing to shift to the local community to pay for and fund public education. And so with tax reform that's needed, we also need to look at systemic ways to fund public education that doesn't just rely solely and the majority from the residents, but from the state. So as we mentioned in the first episode, the state has shifted a lot of the burden from state responsibility to local, and there needs to be a real recommitment to that partnership from the state.
Well, what can community members do to make this change happen?
Public funding is a complicated beast because it changes so frequently. Laws pass all the time, and every 2 years, we go through an entire process where a new budget is developed, and the new budget has a lot of new rules. So it's always changing. We really hope that our community continues to stay engaged and up to date with what's happening. But at the end of the day, the things that we are communicating are not things that we have control over, but they're things that happen to us from policies and laws and budgets that are passed in Columbus. And so we really need our community to be in tune with what's happening and question and advocate for state legislative changes, and to hold not only us accountable for how we spend the money we receive and the results we get, but the policies that are put in place.
There's actually a letter on our website in which they can learn more and find the contact info for their legislators. So make sure to visit our website, nwlsd.org, to find that letter. We'll provide the link in the description as well for you to go directly to that link. So we've talked about public school funding, how it works, and some of the challenges, but often what we hear from community members and what they believe to be how public school funding works doesn't really align with how it works behind the scenes. And so we want to take a quick moment to just dispel some common myths that we often hear from community members, whether we hear them in conversation, online, at family gatherings. So one thing that we often hear, if the district would just live within its means, it wouldn't need to ask for more money.
As a district, we're very proud of the fact that we do a lot to control spending on an annual basis. So we have a 3% partnership with the community. We don't grow our operations more than 3%. We have staffing plans, technology replacement plans, bus replacement plans, a lot of schedules that help keep us really focused on maintaining the right staff and the right operations for the right number of students we have. So we continually adjust operations annually based on what's going on with our student population, the needs of the student population, and the size of the population. The other thing to keep in mind is that a lot of our levies that are passed are flat. So when they're passed for a dollar amount, and we get the same dollar amount year after year after year. So inflation happens, prices go up from year to year. We have a levy on the books from 2012. In 2012, the district asked the community for a little over $7 million. We've been collecting that annually since that levy was passed. That levy has not grown, but our operations, our costs, and inflation has. And so in order to keep up with inflationary costs, additional revenue is needed at some time to keep up with that because revenue is flat.
Let's compare it to some of our viewers back home. If you were living off the same salary you made in 2012, it'd be really difficult to keep up with the cost of living today and to pay your bills in 2025, right?
Correct. And so earlier in the previous segments, we've talked about how state funding has shifted and changed, and we're getting less state funding. So less state funding and flat levies mean that we are continuing to control cost, but even with the intense effort and laser focus we have on controlling cost and being fiscally responsible, at points in time, the need for new revenue exists.
Okay, so myth number 2. If I'm paying more in property taxes, that means schools are getting more money.
Okay, so as Darrell said, taxes are flat when passed. But in 1976, the state passed House Bill 920, which House Bill 920 looks as property values go up, the millage rate on those taxes goes down. So local governments, including schools, receive the same amount of money that they did since it was passed.
Myth number 3, the district spends way too much on administration.
So if you look at the norms that are set, the state would expect that the district would pay no more than 15% on administration. We use 10% as a benchmark, and on average, we spend about 7% on administration. And administration is not principals and directors, that is all administrators in the district, as well as people doing administrative tasks. So our building secretaries, our district secretaries, All of that combines into administrative costs, and we stay within 7%, which is well below what we consider to be the benchmark and way below what the state says it should be.
Myth number 4, only Northwest Local School District families will be affected by funding cuts.
Schools and communities are completely tied together, and they rise and fall together. We are unique in the fact that we not only have a public school system, but a very strong and healthy private school system in our area. We are a both and, not an either or community. And so as things happen with funding that impact public schools, it also impacts things that we provide to our private schools as well, from transportation to other services that go through our district. So this is not a public school versus private school, or I don't have kids in school, so it doesn't impact me. This is about communities. And schools and communities, whether it be public or private or charter, all are in this together. And in order for all of us to make an impact for the students that we serve, so that all students are graduating ready for their next step to actually improve the life in the community and make this area a place where more people want to live, work, and play, we're all in this together.
I think that's really powerful, that we're a both and community and not an either or. So that's all we have for you today, folks. We hope that you enjoyed learning alongside us. We hope that you learned something new and that you take some of these insights and share them with your neighbors. It's really critical that we all stay informed about what's going on. Make sure to check our website. We're always looking to keep you guys informed so that we're ready to advocate for our students and for our families and our kids and our community. Thank you, everyone.